Myra was about 42 years old when she first got a report that she had a breast cancer. It was considered a invasive DCIS, so which meant still that it was within her breast. Nothing showed that it had gone anywhere else. And at the time, she had a lumpectomy and radiation. She didn't have health insurance at the time, so she used a doctor that she knew, but wasn't necessarily a breast surgeon. And she had radiation in Germany because she had moved to Germany right after she had found out that she had breast cancer. And I mention that because I think that part of this theme of Myra's story is that there was some poor judgments made. Maybe it was the time period. It was not a time period. She probably got it in, I'm going to say, 1992. So it wasn't as if she was had computers at her access. It wasn't exactly that time for people to research their own disease in that way. But Myra was a chiropractor by profession. And so she had a really strong medical background. And when she found out that she had breast cancer, she really started relying on that. She actually went to a library, a medical library, and started researching her own disease and researching what was going on in the world with that disease, which led her to an organization, which you may or may not know, that was called Can Help. It was a journalist that in his writing an article, the name of the journalist was Patrick McGrady. And in his research, he found out that most people really didn't know what was happening around anywhere. So he took it upon himself to build a tremendous database of what was going on everywhere in just about breast cancer, I think originally, and then it was other cancers as well. So she had to send that office, that organization, all her slides and everything that she had at the time. And then they would come back to her with really what was going on where and what doctors were doing what. So I may have skipped one little part, which ended up being a major part. And that was after Myra had the lumpectomy and she had the radiation, things were okay for about a year or two. And then she went back to her surgeon in Manhattan, and he wasn't happy about what her scans looked like. And she ended up, at that time, it had already metastasized to her liver. So ball game changed really quickly, because now she knew she had a disease that really was life-threatening versus just a breast cancer that can be treated with a lumpectomy and radiation. So that's when she felt she needed to do something drastic for herself. So she did go to Sloan Kettering. She did have a major round of chemo, and it showed that she had very good results. Like 50% of her tumor in her liver had disappeared as a result of that chemo. But she also knew she was in her 40s. She had a long life ahead of her and felt that she wasn't going to be able to survive by continuing what she knew to be very toxic treatment. And because, being young like that, she had hormones running through her body, and estrogen is is what feeds the fuel to that fire. So she decided to go on not just another path, but certainly a complementary path. It wasn't all considered alternative. Some of it was not alternative. Some of it was complementary, like included in that were all kinds of supplements and things that she was doing. So that is when she sent her stuff out, her slides and everything. So she got some information back that said there was a doctor in Germany that had a clinic in Bonn, and that he was treating women with breast cancer who couldn't get certain things in the States because of FDA regulations. It wasn't as if they didn't exist and people didn't know it, but you couldn't get it. So she was married at that time to a German, so she had German health insurance, and she decided to go there, and she thought she found her savior. He was not just a scientist, he wasn't just a doctor, but he would look at you as if, let me see what you need, versus just, this is the protocol and this is what we do, and that was pretty much what she was hearing in the States. So she would go to him like every 6 weeks for treatment. And some of the treatment was direct heat to the breasts, because they don't live in that environment. Cancer doesn't live in that environment very well. I mean, there were all different kinds of those type of treatments that she got there, and she thought that this man was going to save her life. So what happened, and let me say, she got to the point where there was no visible cancer in her liver at all. And so for all intents and purposes, she was in remission. Her liver was clean, and she felt that it was because of him, really. I mean, she had also done other things before she found him. She went to Mexico. There was a major like subculture in between Tijuana and Mexico, lower, Baja, California, where there were loads of doctors there that were giving a lot of different types of treatment to people that were very desperate. I mean, it was organized. You came into a town and there was a place to register. There were buses that took you, labs that was set up, but it was cash, and it was, you had to question the motive of the people that were working there, and after a while she felt that she couldn't go that route. So Myra wasn't married. She had married this guy, but she had divorced him. That's for other reasons, and not just because he wanted a green card, but she found out, and this is, I thought, an important part of Myra's story. She wanted very much, she was in her 40s, wanted very much to have a child. It's part of why she, I think, married him. And being a chiropractor, she had taken some of liberty. So she felt that to get pregnant at that age with a guy that was a bit older, she started giving herself some estrogen. Estrogen is not what you take when you have breast cancer. And that, she thinks, might have pushed the envelope with it being a breast cancer, that a lumpectomy and radiation might have been enough, and maybe it's metastasized, but it's all speculation. There was no database to follow anybody, with what treatment they had and how it went, and this is what works and this is what doesn't work. So she was really experimenting a lot. She, when she would go to Germany and go to some of these spas that they had, they were big into all kinds of supplements, enzymes, and enemas, organic coffee enemas, lots of alternative type of treatment, and everything was about boosting her immune system. It was getting her own body to start fighting this cancer. And so everything that worked for that, she was gung-ho, and everything that worked against it, not so gung-ho. I mean, and it went all from the very beginning: traditional, complementary, alternative, spiritual. She was fighting for her life, and there were no bars that were going to stop her from trying to get that done. She was she loved her red wine. She loved good food. She loved Italian food. She lived in Italy for maybe 10 years of her life, and she loved all of that type of living, and she went drastically in the other direction. She no more alcohol, or she made herself a little baby spritzer, but she would She went off all smoked foods. She went off all meat. She was totally organic and totally, vegetarian. And so she tried that route. So again, we kept saying to her at the time, keep a journal, because what she was doing really seemed to be working. Here she went from, not too many people get rid of a metastases in that way without major chemo, stem cell, research or whatever, bone marrow transplants, stem cell transplants. So, but she was really, as much as she would have liked to have helped others, she had to feel sure that she was helping herself before she did that. So I found out that I had a lump, and I had a DCIS, not an invasive DCIS. And when I had gone to, which is ductal carcinoma in situ, meaning that the cancer is only in the milk duct. It didn't get out of the duct yet, not in the rest of the breast yet. And when I went with her to Germany one time, I met with the doctor that she, that she thought a lot of, and he said he can't predict what the future would bring. No one really knew whether Myra had one that was hereditary, and that if it were him or his daughter or his wife, he would suggest getting rid of their breasts. And I came home. I spoke to my husband, who I was only married to for a very short time. We just had gotten married about then. And I said, this is what I'm doing. I'm doing a bilateral mastectomy. And none of my doctors really thought that I had to do that, or that was, a necessary component. But when I was diagnosed, I sent my, and I was diagnosed at North Shore on Long Island. And it actually, the slides came back as hyperplasia, which is just an overgrowth of cells, not necessarily a cancer. Or they call it a precancer, or could be a precancer. But from Myra's experience, and she's the one that said to me, you can't rely on one set of eyes to look at those slides and then make a decision for treatment based on those slides. Because sometimes it is not an exact science. So I sent the slides out to a consultant at Dana-Farber, and that's all he did, is breast pathology. And because I sent the slides out to him and the doctor didn't, he spoke to me, because I couldn't get a pathologist for North Shore to speak to me, because they don't speak to patients. They speak to doctors, they write the report to doctors, and then you get the report from your breast surgeon, what's going on. But this guy spoke to me and he said, listen, I disagree with North Shore. I think it is a DCIS. I think you have ductal carcinoma in situ. I think that and I said, so what is the possibility of recurrence? So he said, well, recurrence can be 25%. So I have like 1 in 4 that can come back in this breast or the other breast. He said, well, that could happen. I said, would I fly in a plane that I know that out of every 4 planes that go up, one's going to come down? So I made a decision. Here I was in a new marriage. I knew that my sister's journey, and she was still alive at the time, was so hard. I had gone with her to so many of her doctor appointments. I would say most of them. I had promised her that she won't go alone to any of her doctor appointments. And I was given my orders like not to talk, because she didn't want me talking to the doctors, but to take notes and to make sure that when we got back in the car to kind of debrief and to, make sure what she had. So absolutely her cancer and what she went through, and this is before I she died, was a major impetus for me to do a bilateral mastectomy. It was, at that point, considered a 95% cure. And I figured, you know what? The idea of walking around with a black cloud over my head, and even just having to go to these doctor's appointments, these scans, waiting for the results, in doctor's offices where even if the doctor has empathy and compassion, the staff doesn't always. And you could wait, as I did one time, a whole weekend to get a result after they left a message on a machine saying, please call this office as soon as possible. You know, simple things that you don't think about, or, I mean, you sit on that for like 3 days and you've already written your script. And it's hard to stay cool and positive and not be negative and draw your own conclusions. So I did what I needed to do as a result of Myra's experience, and it was, Myra passed away probably about 5 years after that, and this is now 17 years, that I have since done the surgery. And I have to say, sure, there were times that I wished I had my breasts. I loved my body. I was one of the Club Med topless ones on the beach during my earlier years. And so I won't say that it was nothing, but it was a decision that I made, that I did it for so many other reasons. And I have really never had any regrets. And when, I go for a physical, and if the doctor doesn't remember and they say, so are you going for your mammographies every year? And I said, I don't have breasts. I mean, there's no mammographies where there are no breasts. And that's my story, and that's Myra's, legacy, really, of her life. So I think that if maybe some different decisions were made on her part, it might not have gone this way, but that's how life is. And you whatever decisions you make that are the best for that moment in time, and with the resources that you have around you. And I think that it's a wonderful thing that Joan is doing, because women need information, and the information out there is very conflicting, and they are given, and a lot of women, a lot of people, but a lot of women are given, well, here are your choices. Like, no, wait a second. You went to medical school, you're the doctor, you're the expert, and you're telling me these are my choices to make? No, I want better. I want you as a professional to be able to say, this is the best treatment for your disease at this time. And this is what you can expect if you do this, not to be so open-ended, to say to a woman, you make the decision. It seems to me a little short-sighted.